Hey there, my name is Kyle Boone. I'm a college basketball reporter for CBS Sports. With me today, my fellow college basketball reporter, David Cobb. And today, the NCAA Tournament Committee released its in-season top 16 seeds for the NCAA Tournament. As things stand right now, going into Saturday, just 22 days out from Selection Sunday, the number one seeds are, in order, Gonzaga, Auburn, Arizona, and Kansas. So we're going to dive right into some analysis. David Cobb, you've been studying the landscape of college basketball. You've been analyzing every single release of Jerry Palm's bracketology. What stands out to you as the biggest surprises from the committee's release of its top 16 in-season seeds from Saturday?
I mean, I was a little surprised to see Kansas on the one line. And I know Jerry had him on the one line. And I know that fourth number one seed was always going to be a little bit less clear than the top three. But at the end of the day, I don't really see a number one seed resume with Kansas right now. I think Purdue probably has a stronger case. Purdue 8-4 in quad one versus Kansas, which is 8-3 in quad one. But Purdue has a neutral site win over Villanova. Purdue has won at Illinois, whereas you're looking at Kansas, their best win away from home is at Oklahoma. That doesn't really impress me all that much. The Sooners are 4-9 in the Big 12. I understand the Big 12 is really good. Any road win in the Big 12 is good. But I just don't see that top level number one seed caliber stuff on the Kansas resume. And I do see more of that with Purdue. And I do wonder if that's maybe where some of the predictive metrics factor in, because we all know by now Purdue's defense is probably going to hold it back from winning a national title. But does it really impact their resume as things stand on February 19th? No, if you're looking at resumes, I think Purdue's is better than Kansas right now. So I was maybe a little surprised to see KU on that one seed line. But the beauty of this is that it could all change in the next 4 hours. Sitting here watching Kentucky and Alabama right now could be an outcome right there that plays a role in the way these top two seed lines are evaluated tomorrow.
Yeah, and there's still 22 days away from Selection Sunday, so a lot can change. Obviously, between now and then, I agree with you. I think Purdue should be probably considered as a number one seed. Obviously, they're really close.
I know you think that, Kyle. You have Jaden Ivey listed as the your number one overall selection in your mock draft. So I know you ride with the Boilermakers. So
yeah, I do. I'm an Ivy big stan. I like the ED combination. I think is dangerous. We'll see. I actually do think that Purdue will end up as a number one seed when it comes to Selection Sunday, but Kansas is right there, and obviously the committee views Kansas right now as a number one seed. Which team or team stands out, David Cobb, to you as the biggest snub? Now, we're not talking number one seeds here, but someone you think has had to this point a season worthy of being a top four seed in the eyes of the committee, but obviously today the committee viewed them as just outside of that box. Who do you think checks that box for you as one of the biggest snubs from Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I would say you could certainly make the case for Ohio State as a team that maybe I would have put in over Texas. And now keep in mind, I'm somebody who predicted Texas to win the national championship. In our dribble handoff as recently as like 2 weeks ago, I said Texas is a team from outside the top 15 that could win it all or make the Final Four. So I nothing but respect and love for the Longhorns. All right. But at the end of the day, it's a similar situation to Kansas with Texas's resume. And you saw on the reveal show how frequently Tom Burnett cited what a team had done away from home as a justification for their ranking. And in the case of Texas, you're looking at a team whose best win away from home is at Oklahoma. So we're talking about the Big 12 teams who are highly seeded in this preview. A couple of them now in Kansas and Texas, whose best road wins or non-home wins are at Oklahoma. And so with Ohio State, they at least have that win at Michigan that really looks a lot better now. I think Michigan's more likely to be an NCAA tournament team than Oklahoma is. And Ohio State also has that really upper echelon win from earlier in the season over Duke. So I guess Texas counters that with a win over Kansas. Splitting hairs there. The one that actually kind of irked me a little bit or surprised me was not actually with who was in the top 16, but if you noticed, after they got through the 4 seed line, Burnett mentioned some of the teams that they also considered who were maybe just barely left out. And one of those teams that he mentioned was Houston.
Mm-hmm.
But he didn't mention LSU. And so I think with both those teams, you're evaluating the injury situation and acknowledging that they would be in different situations here on February, the whatever it is, if not for the injuries that have impacted their team. Houston has not won a quad 1 game. They're 0-3 in quad 1. LSU is 5-5. Houston's injured players are not coming back. Right. LSU's guys, Xavier Pinson and Darius Days, who have missed a lot of this season, they are back. And so if you're going to ding LSU, you got to acknowledge that they're getting their injured players back. Houston won't get Trayvon Mark and Bud Sasser back.
Right.
So I think you have to look at LSU as more legitimate moving forward than Houston if you're going to play the injury game. And so I was surprised to hear him say that Houston was considered, but not also say that LSU was considered, because LSU has better wins. LSU has beaten Tennessee. LSU has beaten Kentucky. LSU's injured players are back. Houston's aren't coming back, and they don't have any wins like those 2 that I just mentioned for LSU.
I'm surprised to hear you say this, Cobb. Cobb, you're ready to hold that tiger. I was not prepared for you to ride for LSU, but I do agree. Their situation is pretty unique. They've fallen off a little bit, and it's in large part because of the injuries. If they get those guys back, I think they're in the conversation as well. Cobb, the beauty of this in-season reveal, I think, is that it's pretty predictive historically, in part because it's close to Selection Sunday. We're 22 days out. Also in part because the committee seems to be pretty consistent with how it evaluates teams. So I have 2 historical-based questions that I've written down here for you. The first one, since they started doing this midseason top 16 reveal in 2017, 4 number 1 seeds, that's 1 each year, have fallen off the number 1 seed line by Selection Sunday. So, Cobb, I want you to put your prediction cap on. Who is that team this year? There's Gonzaga, there's Auburn, Arizona, and Kansas. Which do you think is going to, if history repeats itself, fall off of that number 1 seed line?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because when we were prepping for the show, I thought you might ask this. I wasn't really thinking that Kansas was going to be number 1 seed, but since they are, I think they fit the bill. As we've discussed, you never know. Any given night in the Big 12, you can pick up an L, even against your Oklahoma State Cowboys, Kyle. They're playing the role of spoiler quite well, and I think they've got a few more upsets left in them. You know, it doesn't matter if you're playing Kansas State, you're playing Iowa State, you're playing Oklahoma State. Even the quote unquote cellar dwellers in the Big 12 can, beat a potential number 1 seed. So for that reason, I mean, I think Kansas is pretty vulnerable. I still think they're going to win the Big 12, but I mean, there's a really good chance they don't win the Big 12 tournament. There's a really good chance that between now and Selection Sunday, they pick up 2, potentially even 3 more losses. Not because they're a bad team, but because they're playing in a more difficult league than those other teams that are on that 1 seed line. So Gonzaga, they're not going to lose 2 or 3 more games. They probably won't lose a single game. Arizona, I would be surprised if they lost more than once, honestly, even considering the Pac-12 tournament in that. Auburn, their schedule down the stretch is not that difficult. They've got a trip to Knoxville. Other than that, it's pretty smooth sailing into the SEC tournament. Kansas, much more likely, I would say, to pick up some losses. So, 3 weeks from tomorrow when they do this thing for real, I'd be surprised if any of the top 3 number 1 seeds are no longer number 1 seeds, but I wouldn't be at all surprised if Kansas is not on that line anymore.
Yeah, and I'm a known Auburn hater, right? For a long time, I've always hated Bruce Pearl. I think I would take Auburn as the team that is most likely to fall out. I really love Auburn's potential. I was in the preseason. I think Auburn was like 60-1 to win the national championship. I was hammering their futures, thinking Jabari Smith, Kessler, Pearl, like this group has a real chance to make a run. But I think of those four, Auburn is most likely to fall out. We'll see. I think it's
Okay, so
actually
basically,
possible.
Kyle, you're just giving Bruce more T-shirt material here.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I'm fine with it. Send me the
Did you
shirt.
ever get one of those shirts that they printed?
I didn't. There were 4-14 shirts when I predicted that they would go 4-14 in conference play, and they ended up winning the SEC regular season. So um, I do feel like I am entitled to some compensation from that. At least Bruce Pearl could have hit me with a hey, thanks for the motivation. But um, anyways, yeah, you're welcome. That was fantastic stuff. Great content as always. Um, Back to my historical question. I have one last one for you here. You haven't gotten off easy. Every year they've done the reveal. That's since 2017, save for 2020 when they actually did not have an NCAA tournament. There was this whole pandemic thing, it was crazy. A number one seed in the reveal has gone on to win the national championship. Now, again, assuming history repeats itself, David Cobb, who do you think is that team this year?
Well, now that you've trashed them, I'm going to come back and say that the Auburn Tigers
How
are
dare
that
you?
team. And look, it's interesting. The top two seeds as of this reveal today are two programs that have never won a college basketball national championship before. So Gonzaga
Yep.
and Auburn, them being in that position as of February, I keep forgetting what the date is. As of February 19th, suggests there's a pretty good chance we could have a first-time national champion this year. And I think it's Auburn that I would say is the most likely of those teams who are on the number one seed line today. And I know the computers don't love Auburn as much as they love Gonzaga, but guess what? I'm not a computer. I watch basketball games, and I can tell you that Walker Kessler is the best rim protector in the country. And
Slander.
Gonzaga has that rim protection element as well this season with Chet Holmgren, who does a lot of great things on the offensive end as well. But Kessler is better defensively. And Jabari Smith is probably better offensively than Chet is from the outside. So with Jabari Smith and Walker Kessler together in the front court, I might say that it's actually better than the Timmy Holmgren front court because they've got Kessler's a better rim protector. Smith is a more dynamic offensive player. And then the guards are absolute dogs. And then the element of it as well that's not going to show up in a predictive metric is just the reality of the fact that Auburn has been tested for the last couple months while Gonzaga has been skating through the WCC. And Gonzaga is legit. They're totally capable of winning it. There's no reason to discount how good they are. You look at the wins they've got, Texas Tech, Duke, UCLA. They're legit, but Auburn is too. And I think the rim protection element is there. And we saw it when they made their Final Four run a couple years ago. When they get hot from the outside, they're really tough to beat. And then this year, they also add in that defensive element that they didn't have a few years back. I think it makes them a legitimate national title contender.
Yeah, I'm shaking my head at you, and I'm ribbing you a little bit, and in part because I think you're just wrong. But I do still feel like there is this narrative out there that Gonzaga has it. They haven't really played anyone. Like they're skating by in the WCC. Like, are we sure that when push comes to shove in the NCAA tournament, that Gonzaga is going to be for real? And I would take Gonzaga over any team in college basketball right now. I think Chet Holmgren has made a ton of strides over the last month. To me, I think he's clearly the best shot blocker in college basketball. With all due respect to Walker Kessler, just defensively, what he can do for Gonzaga is just special. And that combo with he and Drew Timme, that team, I think the narrative that they can make a comeback after losing in the national championship last year. I think my pick right now is Gonzaga to win it all. We'll see.
Fair enough.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, I was just going to say
I'm
Jalen
traveled.
Suggs is not walking through that door. And
He's
I
not.
mean, so I'm riding with Auburn's guards as
Yeah.
well. Andrew Nimhart is great, but I mean, I don't know that I've seen enough from Hunter Salas and Nolan Hickman
Yeah.
to take
That's
them
fair.
over Katie Johnson and Zep Jasper and Wendell Green.
Yeah. No, that's totally fair. Final question before we get out of here. Assuming history does not repeat itself, assuming that a number 1 seed today in the in-season reveal does not go on to win the national championship, as has been the case since they started doing the mid-season reveal in 2017. Who are you picking as a number 2 seed, a number 3 seed, a number 4 seed from today, or even off the table, someone like Oklahoma, who might not get in the NCAA tournament? I don't know. An ORU who might have to win the summit to punch its ticket. Who do you think a non-number 1 seed has a chance that you like to win the NCAA tournament this year?
I might rock with UCLA. They're all the way down there
Yeah.
on the 4 line. And we do have a question from Matt Norlander that we got to get to here in a second. I'm going to go with UCLA. I think obviously the experience of last season's Final Four run, it will serve them well. They're in a little bit of a down period right now. They're not playing their best basketball as of late. Guess what? They didn't play their best basketball at this point in the season under Mick Cronin in year 1 or year 2 either. And in both situations, they turned it on late and then surprised a lot of people. I still think there could be that type of run in this UCLA team, especially considering that most of the players on this UCLA team are players who were part of those last 2 teams and who have kind of been through that before and have been through these late season doldrums. And, everyone's kind of talking about Arizona, and rightfully so, out of the Pac-12, but UCLA, it would be silly, I think, to sleep on their national title chances just because they're not having the world's best February.
Yeah, and I'll shock absolutely no one and say my pick is Purdue. Norlander and I both picked Purdue to win it all. I think in the preseason, I had Jaden Ivey as my preseason player of the year. I don't think that's going to be the case. I don't think Ivey's going to win player of the year, but those bigs with Edey and Trevion Williams are really, really difficult to defend. And when Ivey is slashing and going downhill, I mean, he creates what Purdue is kind of cooking. And I think when Purdue is right, when they're healthy, and when they're playing kind of clicking on all cylinders, that's a team that no one is going to want to play in March. And I feel like I felt this way about Purdue the last few seasons. I felt this way about Purdue last season, and it fizzled out for me. My bracket was just completely shot. But I think in a few weeks' time, we could be looking at number 1 seed Purdue as a real threat to win it all. And they would obviously disrupt some of the history that we've seen over the past few years as a number 1 seed in the in-season reveal going on to win it all. Looks like we have a question from Norlander. You go ahead and it's from Norlander.
Outside the top 16 do you most like to hop in? He suggests Ohio State, Bama, Arkansas, USC. Of that group, I would go Ohio State, I think, because like I mentioned, I kind of thought they had a good case to be included over Texas. EJ Liddell is just unreal. The guard play for Ohio State, a little bit of a question mark. But you think about they've still got, 6 or 7 games left. To me, that's just a lot of leash for an Ohio State team that has been pretty good this year to make up some ground and kind of sneak into the conversation. So I think that'll be a motivated team too after what happened to them in last year's NCAA tournament. I think we might still see Ohio State's best basketball ahead of it, and a team that's, I think, been kind of overlooked this season just due to the fact that since they beat Duke, there hasn't really been that standout moment for that team. But it doesn't mean that they're not a good team.
No, I think that's right. Norlander named like all my darling college basketball teams, which is hilarious because I love Bama and Arkansas in particular, just because of the way they play. I think Ohio State's probably the correct answer. But gosh, man, I mean, the way Arkansas has played, they're just firing on all cylinders right now. They're playing fast. I trust Eric Musselman in big spots. I feel like the way that they play is conducive to them making a run. And so I think there's a chance to get into the top 16.
I mean, this is the exact blueprint that Arkansas used last season on its way to the Elite Eight. I mean, they were terrible to begin league play, just like they were this year. And then they start ticking off the wins in February and into March. So there's not really a wrong. I mean, of those four that he throws out, USC is the one that I have no trust, no faith in really whatsoever. I think a team that was artificially inflated by a light non-conference schedule, a team that doesn't have that rim protection that it had last season with Evan Mobley. Isaiah Mobley has obviously been great, but I don't know that I see USC hanging around the 4 seed line, 3 weeks from tomorrow. Hey, I do have a trivia time for you to steal a bit from Matt and Gary on the pod. You ready for a trivia time, Boone?
Hit me with your worst, just your absolute worst shot, Cobb. Your worst.
Okay, so last season there were obviously 16 teams that were part of this early bracket reveal. And all 16 went on to make the NCAA tournament. So that's good news. If you heard your name today, you're probably going to make the dance, barring a catastrophic collapse. But of those 16, only 11 were actually among, the top 4 seeds come Selection Sunday. So that means that there were 5 teams that dropped out of being in the top 4 range over that, however, 3-week span leading into Selection Sunday.
Okay.
What was the farthest or the furthest that a team dropped?
Oh,
so
gosh.
what seed line did the biggest collapse end up on?
Oh man, now you're stretching my memory. I got chemo brain. Someone who really fell off at the end of last season. I bet
this is really unfair because you're going to be surprised that this team was even in the top 16.
Okay. One team I know that made a strong push was Oklahoma State. But that is not part of the trivia time. Is this a Memphis question?
So Oklahoma was dropped from being in the top 16 early reveal all the way to number 8, but it was actually Missouri. Missouri dropped all the way to being a 9. So that
were they a 4?
So they were a 4 in the early reveal.
Wow.
The last team included.
Okay.
And just completely tanked and then made an early exit from the dance. So, I mean, let that be a warning, to
that's a good one.
Shoot. I mean, look at those 4s this year: Wisconsin, UCLA, Providence, and Texas. All 4 have been great this year. All 4 deserve to be on that line. Even though I've doubted maybe if Texas should be there or not. I think all 4 of them have been solid. But let Missouri from last season teach you these last 3 weeks can really torpedo.
That was a solid huge collapse. I do not remember Missouri being on that 4 line. So that is stunning. And to your point, like those 4 teams you just mentioned, I can't imagine them falling much, if at all, 22 days from now on Selection Sunday. Like that would be crazy. So, okay, Cobb, I think unless you have more trivia times for me. No. Okay.
No.
Hearing no objections, we're going to wrap this up. Thanks to everyone for tuning in to this live stream of the Eye on College Basketball podcast. As Gary, go ahead. Yeah.
I was going to say, quick shout out to you, Kyle Boone. It was really nice of you to go through chemotherapy just so Gary doesn't have to be the only bald guy on the podcast anymore. So on behalf of Gary, that was very kind of you. So yeah, great to have you back. In all seriousness, man, it's good to have you back in the room, and you're an inspiration to all of us. Shoot. And I know you're an inspiration to the Oklahoma State Cowboys because I see that basketball that they all signed for.
I know.
There. So welcome back.
It's pretty awesome. But thanks to everyone for welcoming me back. I've always been considered a good teammate. So just doing a little chemo to make GP feel better. Like, it's the least I could do. Go ahead and subscribe to this YouTube channel, by the way, in honor of GP. I know he would ask before we get off here. Thanks for tuning in to this special edition of the Eye on College Basketball YouTube. Hope you guys enjoyed. Please subscribe, and we will talk to you again real soon.